United Kingdom, how are you? Thank you so much for inviting me and allowing me to come into your world tonight. I really appreciate it. It's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon here, so things are in full swing. If you hear knocking, I have plumbers here today. But I just wanted to pop in on all of you ladies and just let you know that we as a company are going to be coming to the UK within the next 3 to 6 months. So you can quit paying high price shipping and tariffs. So we're very excited about that. We're going to hit the UK, Australia, and Canada. So thank you so much, ladies, for being the first adopters of this, and I hope that you're having wonderful results and getting the support that you need from us American girls. And I just wanted to come on and do a live Q&A. I am a open book. I'm here to answer your questions about the Fascia Blaster techniques, any of the science that you want to know about. If you just want to know what my cat's name is, we can talk about that. I'm just here to answer your questions and get to know you guys. And then, of course, I'm going to be looking forward to our launch party and our tour over there in a few months. Is anyone online?
Yep, Karen and Lisa say hi, Ashley.
Hi, Karen and Lisa. How are you? Do we have any idea how long anyone has been using the blaster and which ones they have? I noticed last night, I was in the group poking around, and someone had purchased like 20 or something face blaster kits and was going to be selling them out of there. So hopefully we have some UK users out there that are face blasting. This thing right here is my absolute pride and joy. And in fact, when I was just getting ready, I could feel the tension right here starting to kind of pull on my jowl. So me and the face blaster are it's gonna go down later tonight.
You don't have any questions coming in yet.
That's okay, we can talk about stuff.
Lisa says, I have the large face and mini arrived today. I started 4th of July.
Oh, awesome. So she's still a newbie.
Yes.
So I would love to hear how it's going, and love to hear if you have any questions or, you know, things that have come up. I know one of the things that we talk about all the time in the large group is the detox symptoms, which tend to be more towards the beginning of the journey. And then we can just talk about the things that our group talks about, because I think there's a lot of people that may be scared to ask a question, be the first one in the class, but we can talk about things that come up every single day on our page, and hopefully it'll be something that'll be relevant for our UK girls.
For sure. What would be your advice to a newbie blaster who's just wondering how to begin?
Okay, so the question is if you have the face blaster, this is kind of my new soapbox about using this first to kind of gently warm up the tissue, and then going in with either the Fascia Blaster or the Mini 1 or Mini 2. It's not necessary, it's just awesome. So my first recommendation is, if you have this, to use this as the prep tool. And I think, you know, our big lesson that we've learned over several years of doing this with, you know, massive amounts of people doing it, is that going layer by layer by layer is the best way to really address the fascia. You know, I think people get it and they're like fed up with their cellulite or fed up with their pain, and, you know, they grab the big guy and they just go in. But if you just allow the tissue to open naturally, it's less painful. And it's also just as effective as if you go in really, really deep from the beginning. Because the way the fascia works is we have this first layer, and so if you just picture the claws coming across the top and beginning to, you know, open the fascia tissue and loosen it, then the claws can begin to go down into more of the intermuscular fascia. And then people seasoned like Kim and I, you know, I just go in. You literally, it's almost like the fascia blaster is all the way down inside my leg because the tissue is all restored at the top, and I'm always focusing more on the deeper layers or the maintenance. So that's my biggest tip, is to just let the tissue open naturally and go progressively harder and harder as your body allows it. The second thing that I'm just almost a psychopath about at this point is heat. I do blast cold. In fact, right now my hips kind of bother me, so if you see me wiggle around. So if I just need to do a quick little thing on my hip or with my face or something like that, I don't bother so much with the heat. But if I'm really trying to do a good, intensive, restorative blast like I did 2 days ago, I put on the sauna suit. It's very, very hot where I'm at, and I was just out in the yard until I started sweating, and then I came back in and actually got in the sauna and did almost an hour blast. And it feels completely different because the tissue's just so much more malleable. You can speak to that too, Kim. I mean, night and day difference when you're hot, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially for chunky areas or when you're really beyond bound. Huge difference.
Well, if I have a beyond bound part on me, and I just have to tell you, I did some surfing, and you can even kind of see the rippling because I'm breaking it up. But my arms are a constant struggle for me as far as beyond boundness because I'm a surfer, and it's just an enormous amount of work on the arms. And when I haven't done it in a while, my fascia just basically says screw you. And so when I go on a beyond bound place, I always heat. Like, I won't even bother with it without heat.
Tracy says, we're getting a few questions in now. Tracy Smith says, hi Ashley, can I use the Face Blaster oil on my tummy?
Oh yeah. Hi Tracy, how are you? The Face Blaster oils can be used all over your body and the face. I do have the face products and cleansers, and when I'm being good, I use them. But I'll be the first to tell you, if I'm in the sauna, I'm already at it, I'll just take this, the stuff that I spray all over my body and use it on my face. They're very similar in formula. So, and what I would tell you too is I'm really excited about what we're doing with the oils and creams, because I think, what we're hearing over and over, and I feel the same way about it, is that, the reality is that unless you're super sweaty, one bottle doesn't make it through the month. And so our goal is to really get an electrolyte package and a big ugly bottle for the oils and creams, so that it's just like a monthly thing that you can get on auto ship, so that you'll have what you need. And I think that you could definitely, if you're using the Face Blaster, you could just drop the face cream products if you're using the oils and creams for the body, and just use it for both. Save a little money that way.
Karen says, I'm enjoying the Face Blaster and I'm hoping to get good results. Find it hard to heat the face though.
I would say don't worry about heating the face if that's the case. I typically do the face in the shower because you're kind of already hot and steamy. But the fascia tissue of the face is, to me, malleable whether it's hot or cold. I think hot is always ideal, but you could always just do it, after a workout or after you've been outside. What's the weather like there right now? I know in the States, everybody is doing a lot of outside blasting because it's so warm.
Should be summer, probably not Texas summer, but.
Right.
So Lisa says, great, absolutely loving the results already. My issues are chunky bits on top of the knees and also under my chin are my next focus, so any advice on knees would be great.
Okay, so I think every woman has chunky knees. This is like a regular topic of conversation. So I can use my knee as the oh, maybe not. I'm gonna make it really look chunky and creepy and gross. But for the knee area, what I typically see is that the lower quadricep area is always bound on people. I think that the way that we exercise and we kind of overexert the tendons causes this part, the vastus medialis and lateralis, to become super chunky. So whenever I have that, I would say totally heat it. I love using the Face Blaster to really go in on the knee like this. I don't have any oil, so coming in and trying to carve that out, and then of course taking and scraping with the nugget of the Mini 1 or the Mini 2. But I also think an area that people don't like of the knee is this inner knee, and it tends to be really nervy, and I think people shy away from it, but it's just a great technique. I mean, just blast it. It really, really works. Remember, you know, the science is showing over and over and over again that the fascia blasters, whichever one you're using, have the ability to break up that subcutaneous fat. So not only can you open what I call the ravioli pockets, where the fascia sort of serves like the ravioli and the fat is like the meat or the filling, so you can space all of that stuff out, but by blasting the actual fat anywhere on your knees, including the kneecap, you know, we are definitely seeing scientifically that we can break up that subcutaneous fat. So the short answer is just blast it. Blast it, dig it, poke it, go after it, and then contract it.
Alexandra says, "Hi Ashley, I have done 15 full body blasts with great results. I have a big knot in my calf muscle. Is it okay to use the nugget to poke, wiggle, wiggle deep in the meaty part of the calf?"
Absolutely. I think that there's this kind of, I'm so sorry you guys, I'm uncomfortable today in my hip. If you don't know, I have a full hip replacement and I got a little too crazy in some wedges over the weekend. But there's a misconception that the nugget or the tips of the Mini 1 or the Mini 2 should only be used to sort of separate the muscle on the fascia, but you can stick it right in the middle of a knot. So if it's in the belly of the muscle and there's a knot, you just have to think about what that really is. So we have muscle fibers like this, and that's what they look like under a microscope. And they're supposed to contract, relax, and then stretch. And what happens is when we get a knot is they contract and then they maybe don't relax for whatever reason, and then we challenge them again, and then over time they get like this. And the muscle is actually smooth. It's the fascia that's sticking it into a knot. So if you're taking a nugget, which this isn't it, I don't know why I don't have a nugget, but if you stick the nugget down in that tissue and poke and wiggle, wiggle, what you're in essence doing is kind of pulling apart the fascia that's in the intramuscular structures. So absolutely, we do it all the time. We're just talking about this. Kim, you should show them your leg. She went in on her lateral calf.
Might be too hard to see it, but I have bruises.
Yeah, she's got little bruises on her peroneals. Can you see it?
Sort of.
And you were doing poke and wiggle, wiggle and the scraping, or just poke and wiggle, wiggle? Or were you doing the tapping?
I was doing all of it. I was actually doing it during my rest period at the gym.
I love that concept too, of like, you know, it's been around forever in gym world of active rest, but I love the idea of your active rest being your blasting. In fact, when I do heart butt, I'm like, do the heart butt exercise and then blast, and then do the heart butt exercise and then blast. And it's just efficient. I'm one of those like super busy business people. I'm travel all over the place. I got way too many kids, you know, so for me, I got to maximize my time, and I love the idea of lift, blast, lift, blast. It works out really good.
I'm super into it.
I'm totally into it, yes.
Karen says, any advice on the creep skin under the armpit across to the bingoing?
I don't know what a bingoing is, but if we just... Yeah. This part right here. I think this is something, by the way, that I have seen with people, because we see people who are concerned, like, oh, I didn't used to have creep skin here and now I do. And I think that it's really appropriate right now to talk about the atrophy effect. And by the way, anything we discuss in this live feed, we'll post some links for you guys in the comments when you're done. But you have to remember, whether it's your arm or your leg or anything else, if your muscle and your fat and your fascia are all bound into one chunk, when you begin to break that stuff up, you may find that the muscle underneath is atrophied. And atrophy just means like it's not working and it's kind of jiggly and mushy. So when I think about this whole area of the arm, you know, we think of this as the tricep, and I've seen it. Like if somebody has bat wings, they're like trying to do tricep exercises. But the actual skin of this area is shared between the lat, you've got your delt, you've got your bicep, and you've got your tricep. So lifting weights, particularly for our aging gals who are losing muscle mass anyway, it's very important to condition all of this to fill up the skin. And then we have a technique that's actually for the skin, where you're just doing it you know, light and brisk at the surface, because we know beyond any shadow of a doubt that the fascia blaster actually tightens skin, because it's increasing the blood supply to the skin, which is kind of that magic combination between collagen and elastin. So there's no way the fascia blaster causes sagging skin, but I do want to give some, you know, confirmation that the skin can look saggy at first sometimes if you open these hard chunks, and then, you know, then there's not as much space. But where you should go to is more blasting and lifting. So crepe skin to me is a combination of an atrophy effect, a fascia problem, and then obviously just skin as we age and being dry and all that kind of stuff. So it's a combination of all of that. But I think that's completely fixable. My mother, who is in her 70s, this was like one of her major things. She was able to fix it, but she just needed to be doing the right thing. You got to work your lats, delts, bis, tris, fill up this skin, blast, you know, and then obviously part of crepe skin is just not being dry like a reptilian. My oils are really awesome for that, actually. That's what I do when my skin starts looking like that.
So as far as hydration, you'd want to hydrate from the inside and the outside, is that right?
100%.
I think a lot of people do one or the other, but they're not aware that both are components that are needed.
Well, and I also think, you know, I discussed this in my book pretty extensively, because I think that there's this misconception that if you just drink water that you're hydrated. And it would be nice if that were the case, but the reality is that we have a very complex body. We have the concepts of extracellular fluid and intercellular fluid and the neurotransmitters that make that happen. So I would say too, it's very, very important to make sure that you're getting the electrolytes so that your cells can actually absorb the water, which is a conversation I don't know if we've ever had over in the UK, but that's a really important part. In fact, I'm developing electrolytes to be, in fact, I have them. We've been tasting them. They're halfway decent. But we want to have that monthly packet where you have, you know, your water bottle, your electrolytes, you know, hot and cold packs, whatever you need, and then obviously enough oil to slather on your body, because I love my cream, and I'll use my cream at night before I go to bed because it has a skin tightener, but my oil is what I use when I'm coming up out of the ocean. For my beach girls, you know, when you get in that salt water, you come out and you look like a lizard. So I love the oils for that. I put the straight Ashley Black oil right over all of that dry skin, and it's amazing. So that and the hydration and electrolytes from the inside together really can make a difference in the actual skin. But I do want to bifurcate between skin versus atrophy effect, because those are two totally different things.
For sure.
Does that make sense, my girls? Not
Yeah.
trying to confuse y'all.
The book explains hydration really well. I believe it's page 80, but it talks about electrolytes, the interstitial fluid, and all of that. So,
Well, also we can post that link where we did the difference, because, you know, I made the point because a lot of people talk about the saggy skin thing. You know, I was working with a football player who clearly doesn't have saggy skin, but I opened up his quadricep and he was post-operative, and so he had that muscle atrophy, which made it look like loose skin. So I think that there's a big education curve about here, that even if the skin appears saggy, it's not the skin, it's that you've uncovered the beast underneath. And that's a really important part of fascia blasting.
awesome. Grace says, Ashley, do you think using the fascia blaster can awaken dormant ailments that people have?
That's a great question, Grace. I'll post a link where me and Kathleen and Bart are discussing this a little bit more in depth. You know, I would have to say that the jury is totally out. You know, all I can do is when people present with, you know, rashes, or we actually had a case where a girl had shattered her jawline as a child, and when she blasted, she got some boils, and when they popped the boils, the bone fragments came out. You know, so I think we would be silly to say that that basically detoxing of the tissue, whether that comes through the biodomes or some other mechanism, I think it's absolutely a possibility. But with that said, whenever people present with symptoms of anything, we have to take into consideration that they have pre-existing conditions. I would urge you, if you have any kind of pre-existing condition like shingles or something like that. My mother had shingles. She fascia blasted. She had no symptoms. So I don't think there's a direct correlation, but I think that's where you've got to really look at what you've had in the past and really discuss it with a provider that's very familiar with that particular disease or syndrome. We encourage our users to take the research that we've done, and in 35 subjects that we tested, and we did test their blood 7 days in a row after a blast, and then we tested again at 30, 60, and 90, and we did not see any spiking in hormones. We did not see any stressors on sort of the vital markers that everyone looks at. So I feel like the product is safe, but I think that if you have any type of pre-existing condition, that you should have a real good conversation with your provider about it, and maybe even try like test patches to make sure that you're not awakening something that you don't want to. I know the major contraindication that we put out in our materials is cancer, and it's not because that's ever happened, but we just don't even want to take that risk. So, and I do know people who have active cancer and are blasting, but again, that was a personal decision that they made with their physician. So I guess to sum it up, yes, I think it's possible. And two, I think you should just, work with someone who is an expert at helping them to understand what, not just the fascia blaster, but any type of tissue work can do if there's something creeping around in the biofilms. And by the way, my general opinion is if you have something creeping around in your biofilms, it's better to have it come out.
Right. Safely and at your own pace, which is different for everyone, obviously. Jody says, is it okay to do your eyelids?
Jody, no. Don't do your eyelids.
We say don't go anywhere within the eye socket.
Yeah, and I'll have to tell you why. Jody, I feel you. I don't know how old you are, my sister, but my family, it runs in our family, the deep eyes. Anytime I have inflammation, I feel like my eyes are hanging over. I've been very forthright about my giving up of Botox on my face, but what I have not given up is the Botox in this one brow, because it saves me from that. I blast for crow's feet here. I think it's okay to go, under the eye, above the jaw, nice and soft. I think you're totally good to go all around the eye, but I would shy away from that lid.
Definitely. Miriam
Such
says,
great questions. By the way, you guys are giving me new questions. Maybe
Yeah,
I'm going to
this is
replay
kind of
this.
refreshing.
It is. We've got new blood.
This is actually cool because we were just talking about this. Miriam says, could you make a tutorial for banana rolls under the fat pockets, causing a second line in jeans? That would be so very appreciated.
I love this because I think that every woman who really works hard at their body, even when we're like at our size 2 and we're at our 19% body fat, I think the banana roll is always in question. So let me explain it. I do believe that it's two things, and this is a video we were actually about to shoot today. Number one, in order for, so we got to talk about what creates it. So the two things that creates it are any fascial adhesions that occur in the hamstrings. And then remember, fascial adhesions can occur from like clothes being too tight, or the way we sit, or any type of natural fold, kind of like the back fat type thing. That can actually create fascial adhesions. So if you've ever had a body that wasn't completely toned, then the butt slides down, okay? And then here's the hamstrings. And so the weight of the butt is sort of sitting on the hamstrings, and it creates almost like a weight and a fat roll, and then you tend to get that adhesion underneath the banana. So to me, it's not just the glute hammy tie-in, it's that like 2 inches underneath, right? So you got to be like a crazy psychoblaster underneath the butt. But then the other part of it is you got to get that booty up, because if the weight of the booty is sitting on the hamstrings, there's just no way to avoid the banana roll or the look of cellulite there, because that pushing down is like taking your skin and going like this, you know, and we have such fascious, you know, high hamstrings that's just one of those areas that's really, really difficult. So if you're not familiar with the heart butt exercises or the heart butt video blog, that is what you need to do. And we'll post the link when we're done. But getting that booty up and blasting the heck out of the hamstrings all the way.
That's right. Nisha says, hi again. You have said that you shouldn't use the face blaster on areas you don't want to lose volume from. I'm 57 and had great results on reducing my chubby areas on my lower face, but wanted to know how to tighten up the skin on my neck, turkey neck, as there isn't really any fat there and I don't want to make it worse. Are people getting better results by blasting up and down or across the waddle? Thank you.
I don't know what a waddle is, but I'm going to assume it's this. I call it vagina neck. Yes, I have a sense of humor. So let's talk about what I really think with turkey neck. So there's a lot of things that cause turkey neck. One of it is that there's muscles right here, the scalene, the platysmos, there's more than that. But anyway, so the neck muscles right here, if we tend to have older lady posture, almost every older lady I know has a little bit of a kyphosis, which is where the thoracic spine is rounded forward, which just ends up kind of throwing our head forward, okay? So our head is meant to be on top of our body, and if it's not, or if we're looking at computers, or if we're standing funny, these guys get really overdeveloped and then they poke forward like this, right? So that's not a positive thing. So the way to address the actual muscles being overdeveloped is to literally just go in and start working on them. Now they go all the way up to this part of the head, and then they come all the way down to, you know, and attach on this second rib here. So that's kind of like, you got to do quite a bit with that. So to me, that is more of using the face blaster for the muscle part of it. And then the next thing I would say is you've really got to use your fascia blaster to, you know, get between the shoulder blades. If you can get a buddy blaster to really go across your thoracic spine and start doing the wall technique to where you're getting the length here. I don't know if you can even see it, Kim, in the video, but I used to have really overpronounced neck muscles, and I just remember looking at pictures going, what is happening? So just fixing the overdeveloped muscles and the head is going to help. And now as far as the skin, I really like the technique of, you know, staying nice and surface, where I'm really kind of just getting the skin and the fascia layer and not the muscle layer here, and also here up under the chin. So 3 things: soften the muscles, fix the posture, and then, you know, make sure that you don't have any fat or anything being drugged down into your neck. But I also think 57, 67, 77, we have to be realistic about what it can do. I mean, I've seen some stuff that's like blown my mind, but again, it's still kind of new, and we're still learning, but those are the 3 things that I would do to address turkey neck. That's also, jowls and turkey neck is like my nemesis right now at 45.
Perfect. Kathy says, hi Ashley, I started fascia blasting last October after a big surgery and was safe to do so. I was Beyond Bound, 29 years fitness teacher, and started carefully with the big one and mini. Had immediate results, but also huge detox emotionally and physically. I did sauna full body once a week and then twice a week upper and lower body. I got my face blaster in January. Wow, love it. Introduced all my Pilates ladies to it in Dubai, where I currently live, and UK. I definitely got worse before better too, but stuck with it slowly but surely. I'm truly so happy with the results, Ashley, especially at 56 years old and coming.
Bravo. I love to hear those stories. You know, I think sometimes people, when they're Beyond Bound is difficult. And to be honest with you, most of the Beyond Bound people I know are the ones that either have fibromyalgia, Hashimoto's, you know, where their nervous system has shut their fascia down, or they're the super fit girls. The girl who's filming me right now, Kim, I should have her do her before and after pictures because I wasn't beyond bound. I tend to get hail damagey. I think mine is driven more by the nervous system, whereas Kim was overtraining. She was doing, well, you tell them, like 5 times a week, hardcore.
I was doing like probably a total of 3 to 4 hours a day. I would do 2 gym sessions a day. I would calculate my macros with like an Excel sheet. Like I was really nerdy about it. I was trying everything. I would do
I'm not that
high intensity intervals. I would do sprints. I would do really heavy weight training. I would do boxing, kickboxing,
dieting,
literally everything.
And it's not that she didn't have a good body, but we'll show you the picture. It's the one in the green and bluey striped bathing suit we'll put in the comments. But it's very, very clear that she had like kind of high right in here, you know, beyond bound. I guess it's love handles or back, whatever people call it.
Yeah, it was just like, it was like muscle chubby everywhere. Like you could see muscles, but you couldn't see definition, so I just looked sort of big. And what I wanted,
well, I think
was
back
definition.
in the day we used to call that muscle bound, but
yeah, I would say fascia bound now.
yeah.
And I always, but it wasn't just aesthetically, it's that when you have those big fat pockets in your lower back and love handles, it
that
translates into, yeah, it's tightness. I always get deep tissue massages every other week or every week sometimes, and they would just try to like dig out these knots and adhesions in my shoulders and my back because I was just bound up everywhere. And then I would go and run and jump and do all this
and
impact
completely
over
undo it.
Yeah, I had no concept that I was basically undoing all the progress that I might get in a deep tissue
You
massage.
also, when you're beyond bound, you don't see the muscle definition you deserve to see.
And you don't feel them contract at all.
Yeah.
I would do a quad set and I would feel it here, but I would feel zero activity up here or in squats and lunges and all that kind of stuff.
Well, recently I have been on a mission to get my calves to fire. I tend to get like skinny calves, which makes your thighs look bigger, which I'm not into that. And my entire life, even when I used to bodybuild and work out all the time, I remember every single calf raise, I would just feel my feet burning and never really felt that pump in the calf. So Beyond Bound is something that even though it may temporarily look okay, it's really not okay. And it's absolutely worth the time and energy and effort to restore it. So thank you so much for that, coming from a fitness trainer and a Pilates instructor. Like, I feel like those guys really, really get it the same way that I do. I mean, it makes total sense. It's just not a fun process.
Definitely.
Well, I've also worked with pro athletes, you know, and they're not into it for the beauty aspect, but you can imagine when you take a Olympic athlete and, you know, they're used to hossing around 45, you know, pound weights on a delt raise, but they're so bound that they're starting to get shoulder impingement syndrome and things like that. And then you tell them, hey, let me open up your fascia. And then now all of a sudden they can't lift 5 pounds, you know, so it's kind of like a fake strength and a fake being in shape.
Yep. Zoraya, I think that's how you say your name, sorry.
Zoraya.
Zoraya?
Hi, Zoraya.
I've been blasting often, lost a dress size, whoop. Then got acid reflux. Every time I went to blast, it felt wrong. Back to original weight. I want to get back into it. My belly is my worst spot. Should I avoid my belly when I have acid reflux? And how do I get back into it?
You know, acid reflux is one of those things that we've had reported, but we don't really know why. I can tell you that sometimes on me, when I'm doing, you know, deeper work in my stomach, that it'll kind of shoot and radiate up under my breast. And I think that what we all have to understand is that the body is just so super complex, and that the fascial layers really go deep, and, you know, the nerves run through them, and the blood runs through them, and you know, so I think that blasting can essentially have an impact on anything. And so that's where I would say, you know, if you're already presenting with a pre-existing condition and you know that fascia blasting exacerbates it, I would definitely leave it alone. My hope would be that, you know, that you have some fascial entanglement, you know, in that area, that over time addressing the entire system would kind of let that go, and you could eventually get rid of the heartburn if it's actually being caused by that. But definitely, if something is exacerbated by fascial blasting, I would say don't do it. I also, if you have a great GI that has an open mind, print out our research, take it to them, show them what you're doing, and see if that you can't come up with a collective program to see if those can work together. I definitely would hate to see someone stop fascia blasting because of heartburn, because I feel like you can work around it. Meaning if you're, having a flare up, just avoid the stomach and like really focus on the legs and that type of thing. And if you come up with a great program, let us know, because we'd love to share that. We get that how often?
Not that often.
Not that often.
We've had a few reports.
Yeah, we've probably had 10 total reports of heartburn, but it's 10 reports is 10 reports.
Yep. Lisa says, do you think fascia problems can cause things like low blood pressure, anxiety, and fatigue? I had all of these before blasting. My doctor isn't helpful, which is how I found the fascia blaster, looking for alternatives. So I'm hoping this gets it all out of my system.
What did she list off?
Low blood pressure, anxiety, and fatigue.
Well, let me say this. I don't want to comment on low blood pressure just because that's not my area of expertise. But what I will say is that we know that there's some very positive circulatory benefits. And in our studies, we definitely saw overall lower blood pressure. You have to be careful of low blood pressure though, because that's actually more dangerous than high blood pressure. So that's the one I would go to a specialist on that. I also, low blood pressure.
Anxiety and fatigue.
Yeah, anxiety and fatigue I do want to address because, again, these are all theories, but they're also kind of theories backed by putting together different studies. I think that, that whole antsy feeling that people have, that's anxiety. I think for sure it can be, generated by the, brain and thoughts and things that are scary, and we can get anxiety. But at the end of the day, fatigue and anxiety are definitely linked to your nervous system, and it's just kind of like the idea of, you can be stressed out and, wigged out about all kinds of things, and then you go and get a nice massage and you have a chance to relax. Maybe you have a chance to get out of the fight or flight. So I definitely believe that keeping the fascia open and letting the central nervous system do its thing and staying out of fight or flight can help with both anxiety and fatigue. Fatigue, because when you're in fight or flight, it's like your body is working overtime just to combat it. So those are things that we definitely want to study more, but we get reports all the time of that, don't you, Kim? In the inbox, that's a several time a week thing that we get people reporting that.
It's subjective. It's a lot of pre-existing. Like she said, she had it before blasting. So yeah.
Yeah, I think just by and large, ladies, if you have anything pre-existing, doctors, as long as they have an open mind, or your, whatever your trusted provider is, even your shaman, whatever, I'm open to all of it. Most of those people can look at the ultrasound images, and they can look at what we've found in the blood, and that's their life. That's what they live, and they should be able to tell you how to address your pre-existing conditions, possibly incorporating the fascia blaster.
Perfect. Alexandra says, I love my butt. However, I get really tight in the glutes and piriformis, piriformis, which I think is causing other distortions. Can I blast my behind without losing volume?
Okay, so let me just tell you right now, this is something that I have changed my mind on. I don't know if you saw the beginning of the feed, but I have had a hip replacement, and it was a terrible, awful infection, and I had part of my butt actually kind of dug out, the muscle and the meat, with essentially a medical backhoe. So I have always kind of kept a little extra fat on my butt because I don't want that hole to be visible. And so I just kind of put out a blanket statement that, if you don't want to lose volume in your butt, don't blast it. However, there is more than one way to have volume in your butt. Your volume in your butt can be fat, and your volume in your butt can be muscle, okay? So if you want to blast and build muscle, which by the way is hard, that's why we put out the Heart Butt series, but you absolutely can. In fact, I've had lots of people say, scrap what Ashley said, I could never fire my glutes, and now that I blast them, I do. I just think that you need to keep in mind that if your butt is nice and round because of fat, and you start to break up fat and you have no muscle underneath, then that's going to be a problem for you. That's going to give you a look that you don't want. So I think that they definitely, the lifting and the fascia blasting go in conjunction with each other. But I do blast my glutes, and I do have, like, part of why I'm wiggling around is not only my piriformis, but I just get all kinds of issues in that back butt area. So I do blast it, and I haven't lost volume, but I have been doing the heart butt challenge along with my girls, so much so that I had to stop about 2 weeks ago because I don't know what my genetics are doing, but the badonkadonk runs in the Black family.
Awesome. Grace says, hey Ashley, just to put an end to all the questions about peer reviews regarding the study you did, why do you not want to do a peer review, or why is there no need for it?
That's a great question, Grace, and I would like to put that to rest. You know, first of all of the data hasn't been compiled. You know, we've looked at the factors that we wanted to look at, which were safety, subcutaneous fat, reduction in inflammation, increase in metabolic rate, and then obviously the photographic evidence. When we originally did the study, we certainly were not looking to cure a bunch of things, other than we wanted to be able to say that we were a treatment for cellulite. And the idea would be to take the peer-reviewed journals, which you have to submit. It takes several years, and we would just be going for the category 2 FDA classification for a treatment. And basically what we decided was that, you know, people can clearly see, and, you know, there's hundreds of thousands of women who already feel comfortable that it's fixing their cellulite, and so we didn't see any need to go for that classification. So that's really the reason. I also, just kind of at a heart level, you know, it's not that I don't think it wouldn't pass with flying colors, but I just think we have to define what a peer is, because when I think of my peers, I don't think of medical doctors as my peers, and I don't necessarily think of Pilates instructors as my peers. I feel like fascia is a new industry, and to be quite honest, there's not a fascia board that I'm comfortable with their background to actually be able to review the fascia piece of it. So I think what I'd like to do is present the data at conferences rather than having it peer reviewed.
Awesome. We have 2 more questions. Karen says, any helpful tips for inner thighs? Blast upwards/sideways? ?
This is such a great topic of conversation, and actually Kim and I had it in the hallway, because I think everybody does this, you know, and it's like, oh, my inner thighs are, you know, fat. So yes, I'll give you some techniques, but I think what was so eye-opening for me is when we went to do the study. I've always been like, why are my inner thigh gap is out of the question for Ashley Black, why? You know, so I always felt like this was an area that I held fat, but then when I did a DEXA scan, which shows you where your fat is, I hardly had any fat on my inner thighs. So I think that before I tell you how to fascia blast it, I think that I want to help people to change their whole approach about this area, and that is the same thing we were talking about with the arm, with the leg. You know, the skin of the leg goes all the way around. So if you don't want the skin, you know, kind of sitting and settling where we tend to have the least amount of muscle, which there's just skinny muscles in the inner thigh, then you really want to work on building up the quadricep and the hamstrings as well as the inner thigh to fill all of that out. And to your point, I do think that the inner thighs, for the most part, get the least amount of blood flow, which is not good for fascia. It's just not a natural motion. You know, we just don't sit around all day doing this, you know, and we don't walk like a crab and do things like this. So our inner thighs are one of those muscles that, you know, if it doesn't get contractions, it doesn't get blood flow, which means it doesn't get good fascia. Does that make sense? So to undo it, I am telling you right now, I am the laziest blaster ever. I wish I had the Mini 2 on me, but I lay on my back like this, and I literally get it just like that. Is that how you do it, Kim?
Yeah, I do
I
that,
also
or
use
I
the
prop
big
up
one.
one leg in the shower and do it this way.
Yeah, or I'll lay totally on my back or in the sauna and kind of get it like that, kind of come up like this, and get it, cross fiber. So I guess it goes back to the age-old question, are you a laying down blaster or are you a standing up blaster? But I like to lay down and just basically spread it like I'm at the gynecologist, and I like to one-hand it. I feel like I get the most leverage that way.
I love the mini, both the mini 1 and the mini 2 are great for
Mini
inner
1 and
thighs.
mini 2 are great for inner thighs.
Nisha says, are you going to set up any UK suppliers so we can buy any new product or oils, etc., without having to pay the import taxes and postage? We addressed that a little bit at the beginning, but for all those just joining us.
Yes.
Yes.
Also, it wouldn't be suppliers. We are actually coming to the UK. In fact, we're going to do the whole thing like we've done in the United States. We're going to do a launch party. We're going to get all the Blaster sisters together. And it will be a lot of fun. And yes, it will take all of the taxes as well as the higher cost of shipping completely out of the equation. And we will be bringing all of our products. It's just a matter of getting everything registered and getting our fulfillment houses set up and making sure that we are compliant and good to go before we can do that.
Alexandra says, don't want to get too intimate, but can you blast to address pelvic floor issues?
Yes. Yes is the short answer, but what I would tell you is that you don't actually have to go intravaginal. In fact, I wouldn't recommend it to address pelvic issues. I think years ago in my career, I consulted for a big women's hospital, and what we have to understand is what is causing the pelvic issue. And I really think this is something where an x-ray and a really good conversation with your physician about it, because what I tend to see where people have pelvic floor dysfunction, and again, that's just a general term. There could be a million causes for why the pelvic floor is spasming, but I look at it like there's two halves of the pelvis. And if the pelvis gets rotated, or if the pelvis shifts like this, or if the femurs come up and they start to collapse in on like vaginal walls, those are all things that can cause that pelvic floor to spasm. Also, if you've had surgery, for fibroids or something like that, and you have the scar tissue, but you can address the pelvic floor by doing, the high inner thighs. You can go right across the pubis. I'm totally fine with going right onto the labia, but I also think that, and we will add these links at the end, but I think the key is getting the pelvis and the hips balanced. So like pulling out the hips, the posture videos. I think that the fascia blaster is kind of a temporary solution to get everything loose so it can move, but at the end of the day, we want to see those femur heads directly up into the hip sockets. We want to see the pelvis completely level, no shifts down there at the puboral nerve. I don't know your whole situation, so I just kind of threw a bunch of things out there.
But the answer is yes.
But the answer is yes.
Rachel says, I've been blasting since December and have just started to get a sharp pain on the outside of my thigh. Is this just because I was super bound? Am I just starting to loosen things up?
Well, sharp pain is something I think we should designate. Sometimes when you're beyond bound and you blast a lot, and it opens nerves, you can have kind of like that shooting, like needly, tingly, and that's okay. But yeah, but if you're having a sharp actual pain that's persistent, I would say that is probably unrelated to the fascia blaster, and just to get that checked out.
Everyone's excited about us coming to the UK.
Me too. I want to get an accent. My daughter's name's Maddie, and for whatever reason, I just always go, Maddie. So I'm going to need some help with the British accent.
Shireen says, I've just tuned in. Welcome.
Hi,
I'm
Shireen.
worried about the thread veins coming up on my legs. Is this normal?
Thread veins? Meaning like the spider veins? So I have to say that the veins is one of those things that there's a reason we put it on our warning labels. When your tissue, particularly if you're like really, really white and kind of clammy and you already have circulation issues, or it's like a beyond bound area, we have absolutely seen where people have blasted and they're all of a sudden getting blood flow to the area, which will present as a spider vein. By and large, if you continue to blast, that seems to be going away. Varicose veins, we say to go all around them. We're definitely seeing a reduction in varicose veins. I've even had people that were like, hey, Ashley, I went around them and it worked so good, I went over them. But it's just one of those things that, to me, that's a very personal decision as to what you want to do with your veins. I have one varicose vein. I choose to blast it. It feels better for me. It's not going away. It's an old injury. And I definitely do have spider veins pop up from time to time when I work on a beyond bound area. But I would have to say that the best thing that I would recommend for that, or the concern of that, is to do a test patch and just see how your body responds before you go and do your whole body.
Would you say, though, that if you see some spider veins appear in a certain area like your thigh, that it's important to open up the fascia and the blood flow in the entire extremity?
Yep, above and below it, because you want to start getting the blood going through the whole thing. You have to remember, a spider vein presents because there's partial blood flow. So if you go from no blood flow to partial blood flow, then you may have a spider vein. But if you go to full blood flow, then that should move on out. That's our current theory. That is what we're seeing in all of our anecdotal research, and that's something that we definitely want to explore further. But there's a reason why we put that as a warning, because all we can do is base on women who send it in. I mean, I could send you 50 pictures right now of people whose veins have gotten better, but we definitely do have people tell us that the spider veins pop up. So you got to go with your comfort level of restoration. For me, I'm one of those full bar, go ahead. Even if I had legs that didn't have any spider veins and all the spider veins popped up, I would be like, awesome, now my blood's flowing, I gotta keep it flowing. But again, that's my personality, that's my personal preference, and I think that definitely goes in a personal preference category.
Definitely. All right, we have one last question from Rachel.
Rachel!
If you are trying to conceive, is it safe to blast? Or is it safe to blast if you became pregnant but don't know?
Pregnancy is one of those things that the lawyers always tell me, just put it as a no. We are working on always updating our terms and conditions and frequently asked questions, and I think we're going to end up releasing it completely for pregnancy. If I were pregnant, I would blast. As far as conceiving, I've actually had people tell me, again, it's anecdotal evidence, but that they've been trying to conceive for years, and just, not only fascia blasting, but all types of different healthy therapies, all of a sudden they're able to conceive. So definitely I think it's safe to try to conceive. I think that's awesome. And as far as becoming pregnant, I think it's take the research to your doctor on detoxing. There's blogs, we'll put them in the links. And also, just kind of use your common sense. So what kind of girl are you? Are you that girl that won't color her hair or whatever? Then no, I wouldn't use it. But if you are someone who's, all for it, understands it, then I think you can discuss it with your provider and blast away.
Awesome. Lisa's asking for tips on getting started. That was actually the first thing we addressed, so you can just watch the beginning of the video. She's a little nervous, really wants to make sure she's using it right.
Anyone that's nervous about using it, I would say do a test patch, because then you can kind of get a feel for it, what it's supposed to feel like. You'll get more comfortable with it. I would say join our main Fascia Blasters page, because we have people who've been doing it for years who can jump in and give you their experience with it. So don't be nervous, just start off light and fast and see how it goes. We always have our inbox available. We're happy to coach you. We're here to help.
Awesome. Everyone says, thank you, Ashley, you're amazing. Everyone's excited
you
about
guys
coming
are amazing.
to the UK.
Thank you so much for paying so much to get the blasters there. You guys are the first adapters, and we've been through this wave in the United States, but it's so exciting planning our world launch. And knowing that there are people out there who are basically willing to pay double for the product just to try it. So you guys are, to use one of my words, you guys are dope.
Yes, everyone's saying thank you and they love you. We'll post some resources and blogs and tutorials in the comments to demonstrate what Ashley's just been talking about. We love you.
We